All right, everybody, this is Marcos Avellan here with BlackBeltPsychology.com, and I'm here with a big-name UFC fighter, Alan the Talent Belcher. Alan, you there?
I'm here, Marcos. Thank you.
How's everything going first?
Everything's going fantastic, man. Having an outstanding day, and everything's going good.
Well, Alan, I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. I do a lot of stuff with about preparation, like psychological preparation for martial arts, whether it be training or whether it be self-defense combat, or in your case like a competition. And you're fighting in the world's biggest stage, and I got a lot of people on my list that I know are going to be super happy and very interested in hearing your perspective and what goes on inside the mind of a top level UFC fighter. So I just want to ask you a few questions, and are you ready to get started?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Well, first of all, how much of a factor do you think psychology is in fighting and competition?
Well, I know it's pretty cliche, but the main difference in fighters, I believe, is what's between their ears. So the reason I know that to be a fact is because I saw tons of great athletes, even guys that are better athletes than me, they could quite possibly beat me inside the gym or anything. They couldn't take it to the level that I have, or just got, choked in the ring or in the cage. I saw guys that are phenomenal, and they come in, either I train with them somewhere, or maybe they came into my gym, and I'm just like, man, this guy right here should be the next UFC, light heavyweight champ or something like that. But they just don't have what it takes upstairs, really. The middle of the game is the majority of it. MMA specifically is, all sports have a lot to do with the mind, but MMA is really, really, really kind of depends on how strong you are mentally and how well you prepare yourself. So I think the psychology is a huge part of MMA fighters.
Well, I definitely agree with you on that. I like the way you mentioned other sports and how you think MMA is even more important. I agree, because with other sports you're dealing with just the nervousness of performing, whereas with MMA you also have all these animal instincts that are into play. For the whole fight or flight, all these different things are into play. So it's a lot more taxing. How would you rate your own fight mentality?
Well, it's always it's a work in progress, and I think most fighters would probably tell you that. If they can be honest with themselves, is no matter what level you are, you're always going to have a mini little battle. Through your training camps, before, when you're in the locker room warming up, and also during the fight, you have those little battles with yourself inside your own mind, and that's kind of the trick for me. Is I'm sure not exactly the same for everybody, but everyone experiences those type of things. It's hard to be honest sometimes. I was just talking with a couple guys the other day about the instinct to quit sometimes that almost everyone experiences, but nobody really likes to talk about. And for me, that's happened in almost every single fight in my career. There's just something that's natural about something inside your head. Whenever something gets tough, you have to have a battle with yourself. You kind of have to push forward and remind yourself. And however well you're prepared before that fight is whether or not you're going to submit to that little voice inside your head telling you to lay down and quit fighting.
I totally.
Like I said, it's a work in progress.
Well, that's a great answer, because a lot of people have this idea that, these guys are fighting, in the UFC, they're fighting, they're the contenders for the title. They must feel like like ice in their veins. Like there's nothing, like just another day at work. But you get perspective for a lot of guys out there that do have a lot of self-doubt sometimes, and they can realize that, hey, even the top level guys can sometimes have those annoying thoughts about quitting and stuff that they think is unnatural. I know that these questions I'm giving you are all questions that people on my email list were emailing me, for this, and based on that, the next question I have, which is kind of going in the same direction we just said, someone asked, with your training, have you ever encountered a plateau or a not so good period, and how did you get through it? Have you ever felt like you were getting worse?
Like you were getting burnt out?
Yeah, like I guess they're like saying, like, have you ever felt like you were a better fighter earlier in your career versus later in your career?
Oh yeah, well, early in your career versus later in your career, I think that's to do with when you're younger, you don't know as much, and you haven't experienced certain things, and you feel more invincible, and sometimes you feel like you might be, but looking back on it, you might have been better when you were younger because you didn't know so much. And I mean, I felt like that before, because I think it's really just that drive that you have whenever you're young. You want it so bad, and you have this confidence that may not be real, but it's something that you have whenever you're more inexperienced, and it's really strong. So when you're later on in your career, you've already been through lots of ups and downs, and you've been there. And sometimes it's a little tougher. You look back, and sometimes you think, man, I wish I was just, I didn't know as much. Whenever I was younger, I fought with more carelessness and did better, really, Didn't train as good or as smart, didn't eat as good. But whenever I was in there fighting, I was fighting like I was, defending myself on the street or fighting in a bar fight or something. That's kind of how you feel when you're younger. And there's good, it's an advantage, but there's also a lot of advantages to being experienced. It's something that you have to realize these things. If you don't know this, you're going to feel like, man, I just lost something,
Right. Yeah, what I'm saying is, if you're not prepared for it, you don't know that everyone goes through that, and that's the reason, you're going to feel like maybe it's you don't have it in you anymore. You have to know, you have to know the truth and be real with yourself. And as for the plateau thing, every fighter experiences that physical and mental plateau. You just have to know that it's coming and know that it's natural. And sometimes a good break from training is what the doctor ordered. A lot of times for me, when I'm starting to feel like that, it's just it's kind of like overtraining. Not only your body, but your mind also needs a break sometimes.
It's a great answer. And for the guys that are on here that never competed in that, and they're more focused on just training, you know what I mean? A question I got was, when is the last time you have seriously contemplated quitting during practice, and if you've ever thought about it? What did you do to overcome the urge to quit?
That's something that one thing, I guess, genetically or something that's in everyone, how well you can naturally overcome that. But at the same time, it's something that's learned. A lot of people believe that if you're a quitter, you'll never be able to overcome that, but I disagree with that. I think that it's all about education and knowing that this is going to come and being prepared for it. Like I said before, if you're in there in practice on a fight and you feel that little voice talking to you telling you to quit, you do something that you didn't know that was natural, then you might submit to that and quit. So for me, it's just the experience of knowing that I've been there before and then I've made it through this before. So all the practices that I've had, there's always times where you have to grind, you have to dig deep, and overcome that voice in your head. And every time you do that, it makes you a little bit stronger for the next time. And when you get to that point in your training camp or your training practice or whatever, when that starts to happen, the times that you made it through it before is going to help you. You're just going to remember those times. I've been here before. I've had this little voice tell me to quit before. You know, I only have 3 minutes left in this round. You know, I'm going to dig deep. And, you know, back up, man up, and try to look like I'm not tired, and just go through it. It's going to be over in just a couple minutes.
And Alan, have you ever taken a fight as a late replacement?
Yeah.
Was knowing that you were not as well prepared as your opponent, did that affect you at all? And if yes, how did you overcome it? Or how was it a factor? Like, any tips based on your experience for someone that has to be a late replacement?
Right. Well, here's my feeling on that. First off, every fight I've ever had where I was a late replacement, or I wasn't in good shape, I wasn't getting an injury or a sickness or something like that. I was going into a fight with an injury, or I was fighting someone bigger or stronger, faster, or maybe, you know, I was an underdog. Most of these fights in my career are the ones that I performed the best. And I think that's because two reasons. One is it relieves the pressure from you, and mentally you know that if you lose that, you're going to have an excuse, which is kind of weird to say, but it's the truth. It's not an excuse to tell people, but inside your mind you'll really be able to say, well, I wasn't prepared. So it relieves a little bit of pressure. And the other thing is, you fight more on with your natural instinct and your skill. So you have to think, well, this guy is bigger and stronger, so I have to be on top of my game to beat him. The guy's better shape than me, that means I have to be technical, that way I can conserve energy or stop him fast. So you're stopping these pressure situations where you have to perform. And I think that's why I perform well. And I bet if you ask this question to other guys, you probably see a lot of the same things. And maybe even if they don't know it or not, if they look back on it when they're in these kind of situations, they perform better. It's just if you have someone pulls a knife on you in the street, you're probably going to be sharper and faster and do the right move, as opposed to if someone's just playing around with you with a fake knife in the gym and you're just goofing off.
That's a great answer. It makes total sense. And on a similar kind of line of questioning, have you ever taken a match versus an opponent that you thought was better than you? And if yes, how did you prepare for that match, and how is it different than normal? Were there positives and negatives about the matchup, and were you able to overcome psychologically? If yes, how?
Have I fought someone that's better than me? I would have to say yes, that I have fought someone that's better than me. But that I believe that person was better than me at that time, I would say no. There's probably some aspects that if that person was better than me at, whether it be their striking or grappling or conditioning, experience, whatever it may be. But I never took a fight that I didn't believe that I could win. And at that point, I believed that I was a better fighter overall because I was going to win. know that their skills may be better. So you can always find some kind of weakness in your opponent and find the strength in yourself. If it's just trying to find the confidence to do it. Sometimes it may be even a little bit false, but you have to believe that you're better than your opponent. Otherwise, you don't have any business getting in there fighting him. You're going into the fight losing already. So it's going to be hard. You know, you can take my fight with Dennis King is a perfect example. Whenever I fought him, he was one of the best in the world. And his jiu-jitsu, his striking, his conditioning, his ranking, everything was just straight. You know, a big underdog. That I saw some weakness in his mental toughness. And if I could keep pushing him, my conditioning and my mental toughness would be able to take advantage in the late second or third round. So he was beating me in the beginning, but stuck to my plan and kept pushing hard. And I figured out a way to beat someone that was on paper better than me.
Nice. And I have a question. When you were going to fight Paul Harris, I know that going into that fight, he had a lot of a buzz going into it. He had a reputation for, you know, exceeding past the tap and hurting opponents and stuff. He had like a kind of Mike Tyson kind of swagger going into that fight with you. Did any of that have any effect on you psychologically going into the fight? And if yes, how did it have an effect?
Yeah, I mean, you're either gonna get on and let that bother you, or you're gonna let that energy and that nervous energy propel you into the best performance ever. And that's one of those times where everything lined up for me. My mind was just right, and I really prepared myself. That's a fight where preparation was the key. Preparation is what gave me the confidence for that fight. I didn't get the confidence just because I was born with it and I believed that I could beat Paul Harris. I knew his strength. I knew he was killing everybody, ripping everybody's legs apart. So I brought in the right training partners and coaches, and I drilled my butt off for 8 weeks, working on every leg lock situation ever, and that gave me the confidence to beat him. So, another way to answer the question, and his hype and everything, did that affect me? It affected me by making me do what was necessary to prepare myself for that fight. And being nervous and not wanting to go into some kind of surgery because I got my knee or something there's enough motivation to make sure that I prepared right, which in turn gave me the confidence to perform at my best. Nice.
And when you're going into that fight, obviously you knew his strength was the leg locks. Everybody knew that going into it. Was your mentality before the fight thinking that I'm not going to get into his leg locks, or was it that, hey, I might get into a leg lock, but I'm going to be good anyways? Like when you were going into the in your mind, did you think that because in your you ended up landing right into his strong suit, you ended up playing the leg lock game with him. He was going for a leg lock on you. Did you go into there with a realistic idea that you were going to end up in the leg lock, so it didn't surprise you when you got caught in it, or was your heart racing when he was going for the leg lock?
My heart was racing. I was just, I had been there so many times. I felt comfortable. But in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking, at any time he's going to do something that I'm not prepared for. And, this guy is really good. So when is he going to do something that I'm not prepared for and snap my ankle? Like, I thought something was going to happen. I was just reacting, and I felt comfortable, but at the same time, I was expecting him to do something a little different. It's not that he wasn't doing anything good. It's just I was prepared. I was prepared perfectly, And what is some advice I can give to fighters that it's really good advice, I believe. When you go into a fight like that, or any fight really, one of the worst things you can do is visualize that fight going perfectly and say you don't want the guy to take you down. If you visualize the fight over and over and over where you don't get taken down and it just goes perfectly, if something goes wrong in that fight, your system's going to shut down. If your brain's like a computer, and that's not what it was programmed to do. It's like some kind of virus went in there and just messed you up. So, in the example of the firearms fight, if I would have went into the fight thinking, I'm not going to get in the leg lock, it's not going to happen, I'm going to, stop everything, then as soon as I got into the leg lock, it would have, it would have messed with my mind. But instead, what I did was I had a game plan to try to avoid him getting to my leg. Right? And I also had a plan for if he did get to the leg, which was a pretty good probability because every single fight he had before that, at some point he got to the guy's leg. So I had to be prepared to be in there in the middle of the leg lock storm. So, thinking that you're going to go perfect can hurt you sometimes.
That's a great answer, Alan. Now, when you have lost, how has it shaped you as an athlete, and have you had any losses that affected you uniquely?
All losses, all my losses have affected me, I guess, in different ways. Different points in my career, helped me out in different ways. One of the things that a loss can do is kind of give you a wake up call and point at your weaknesses or flaws. It's up to you whether or not whether you fix that and get better at it, or if you just say, "Oh, I'm not good," and I quit. So that's all my losses in my career. If you look at my UFC career, you'll see every single loss up until my last couple fights were followed by 2 wins. And then I would lose. I would win 2. I would lose. I would win 2. And then every time I would win after that, I would be presented to say I won a fight and get my win back in my UFC. And then I'd be presented with a higher challenge against a higher ranking opponent. And that would just move my ranking up. By the third fight, something would go wrong. My mentality was weak, or maybe the guy was instead. I would lose the fight. And then I'd have to readjust my mind and win again. So it was up until a couple of years ago, I hadn't won more than 2. Make some adjustments. I won 4 fights in a row, I believe. Something like that. And finally got past that hurdle. But you can see it with my record that every time I had a loss, I came back stronger, and I improved, and I jumped up my rankings all the way up until my last couple fights, in which I fought basically the top 2 guys in my division. Yushin Okami, Michael Bisping. Those guys are really, really hard to beat. They don't make mistakes, and they're top of the food chain, top-ranked guys. So all those losses before that led me to there. Obviously, you're not going to lose on purpose, but whenever you do, it's up to you what you do with that, whether you make it improve you or set you back and make you quit.
Nice. When you mention making adjustments after losses, was there anything like any kind of psychological adjustment you remember making that you could help out for other people that are going through tough losses?
Yeah. I think, one adjustment I mean, I'm thinking about why I lost the fight. That's the adjustment that I would make to go back and win. So usually, one thing that I found that was very, very common in all my losses was I was overconfident and I wasn't motivated. That's a deadly combination right there. So, if you're ever feeling that, you have to find a way. You have to find a way to change it. One thing that'll help you from being overconfident is realize that anyone can beat you, and everyone is dangerous, especially in the sport of MMA. Not only do knockouts happen easily, but it's a game based on points, and you don't have a lot of time to score points. So if you make the mistake and start off behind, anybody can beat you. So everyone's dangerous, whether it be by a knockout or accidental, I can't say accidental submission, but accidental knockout or you make the mistake and lose on points. Overconfident is bad. Now you mix that with lack of motivation because maybe you think that your opponent is going to be an easy fight, or you're confident you're coming off your losses. That's bad. You have to find the motivation. You have to find what this person can possibly beat you at, and what this fight means to you to win it, and how bad it would be to lose this fight. Find the motivation to train your butt off of, and more important to train hard, to get your mind right. If your mind doesn't match your training, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how hard you train, how much practice you go to. If your mind isn't connected, you're not in there, it's not going to do any good. You're just going through the motions.
Alan, do you have a number one thing you do psychologically to prepare yourself for a fight?
Really, the psychological training to me takes place in every single practice. Like I said before, for me, I can feel whenever I'm putting everything into practice that I'm really fighting. The practice should feel almost like a fight. I mean, you should get yourself amped up and get your mind ready to perform and practice and have the best practice ever. And then whenever you're faced with those challenges during practice, that's whenever the training happens most for me. Obviously, the closer the fight gets, the more you start to think about it outside of practice as well. So, for me, even driving late in bed at night, whatever it is, however I visualize, however I feel, is kind of how the fight's going to go. You know, for the most part. But to get myself mentally right, it's just engaging your brain and putting yourself in the situation and thinking about the things that could happen and probably will happen and how you're going to deal with them. For me, that's how I train psychologically.
Nice. And do you have a tip you recommend to people, like a concept or a drill or just something to remember psychologically when they are in between rounds? Like, is there anything special your corner does or that you recommend to tell a fighter in between rounds when they're sitting on the stool?
I like to relax during rounds. I think that during the fight, your brain and your blood, everything's pumping so fast, it becomes a little foggy. So I think the worst thing that a corner can do is start jumping there all excited and start telling them all the things they did wrong, all the things they need to do. More important than anything for you and the corner is to relax, get control of your breathing, and slow your mind down. And try to give your mind a little bit of break. That way it's not so foggy and you can see things more clearly. There's not any, if there is a big change that you need to make, it's probably not going to be multiple changes, you know. And you're not going to be able to make this one big change if everyone's excited and they're telling you 100 different things to do. The corner should focus on one thing, maybe two, and the fighter should just take a deep breath and start the round fresh. That's another thing. I put the other round with the first and the second round. I've let that bother me in fights before. I lost the first round, and then going into the second one, I was just thinking, man, I told myself I was not going to lose the first round before. I'm going into the second round, lost the first one, now I have all this pressure. Whatever happens, you have to put the last round behind you and go into this one with a clear mind and a fresh start.
That's awesome.
That's the best I got for you.
Totally, yeah. What's in the past is the past, right? Can't change what already happened.
That's right.
And last question. Okay. How do you describe the way you feel the week before the fight? Is it different than the rest of the camp? And do you do any other things during that week so you don't drive yourself crazy before the fight?
I mean, that's a work in progress. Anywhere you're at in your fight, I mean, some people may think that they have it down pat, but you know, one thing that I like to do is rest my body and rest my mind. As the years went on, I became less and less nervous during the week of the fight, and it was really just the couple nights before the fight that was starting to get me, you know. So sometimes you have to find things to get your mind off of it. Realize that you need to rest, but you don't have to lay around and think about the fight all the time either. You know, you can go for a walk. It's not going to hurt you at all. It's not going to make you sore, make you not have energy for your fight. You can walk around. You can watch movies. You can go to a movie, whatever. You want to focus on your fight, but not let it eat you alive at the same time. That's probably the best advice I can give. That's something that you gotta experience to play around with what works best for you.
On that same note, in the locker room the day of the fight, anything you do particularly? Because there's people there's always that famous little clip of Fedor playing cards in the locker room, Pride. Is there anything particular that you do in the locker room, or you just it's every fight different? How you feel? Do you have any rituals you do in the locker room?
Yeah. To me, I come in. I come in to the locker room, and I start to. I relax. I lay around, and I try to keep as calm as possible until I'm 60 minutes away from my fight. Now, that's kind of my routine, I guess, is the last 60 minutes before my fight is where I start to gain momentum of getting myself warmed up, getting my timing right, working through all my drills, and getting myself excited and motivated for the fight, and getting myself focused in mentally. So that last 60 minutes is crucial to me. I start exactly 60 minutes on the dot. I go through my warm up, to hit the pads, move around, stretch, and I listen to music. Music to me gives me a lot of energy. So picking it may sound kind of corny, but picking that playlist. A lot of times I may pick the song or listen to the songs during the training, and it's almost like hypnotizing yourself. You whatever you listen to in a training camp, if you can dial in that mindset, and it goes along with that song. Whenever you start to warm up for your fight and you hear that song, it's gonna trigger all that mental training that you've been doing. So music may or may not work for everybody, but to me, it's really important. Listen to the right songs that trigger that mindset, and that last 60 minutes is just a build up to the fight. So right when I'm going after the fight, I've achieved that. I've achieved that mindset that I was working towards, and you peak for the fight, not only physically, but you hit that mental peak for the fight. Right, perfect timing.
Well, Alan, that's a great answer, and that was a great interview. Appreciate your time so much. Like I said, a lot of people are very excited about hearing your perspective on things, and a lot of the answers, all your answers were very honest, and even when you admitted your nervous one thing, and like you say, a work in progress. And I think that for a lot of our guys, hearing your advice and also hearing that you're still working on it. I mean that so that when they feel insecure with themselves psychologically, they know that everybody's working on it. And any final things you want to say? Any website? What's your website? For people listening here, maybe someone here that hasn't seen your website before. Someone wants to learn more about. I know you teach a lot of techniques and stuff online. Someone.
ProMMAtraining.com is where I write articles and post up techniques, and then I also have a lot of other trainers that have done techniques. So I give people an opportunity to learn from not only me but other. I'm trying to find the best MMA fighters, MMA coaches that can teach and do videos and whatnot. So you can find me there, and obviously on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, man. I appreciate the opportunity and everything. It was a lot of fun, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate it. And I'm going to put this up on blackbeltpsychology.com. And also, guys, check out ProMMAtraining.com, correct?
Yeah, ProMMAtraining.com.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate it very much.
All right, Marcos. Thank you very much. Bye.